We have enough for a quorum, but
Recording in progress.
I'll just as soon wait a minute or two just to make sure we get everybody in, 'cause it's just turned 7.
Russ, Chris Plex is on his way in. Do you know of a Dave McDonough? Is that somebody that should be let in the room or?
I don't know who he is, but
Okay, maybe
you
it's
know,
just,
let him in, and if they start getting out of control, you got the mute button. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good, Russ. How
Uh,
are
Yeah,
you?
Teresa, Teresa, I see Dave was maybe connected to rec or some sort. He was in an email chain with Ted and
Oh,
some
okay.
other field study stuff. So
Yeah, I think he may have been one of the people I talked to at town meeting when he was interested in the rec doing a lacrosse wall.
understood.
So that could be it.
Great.
Okay.
Let's get to it.
Well, I know Mary Ann's not going to be here, so why don't we start? The main thing on tonight is doing the trust agreement with the Affordable Housing Trust.
Russ, you
so
want to just call the meeting to order just for the minutes, please?
you took the words right out of my mouth, Chris.
Okay,
Thank God you're here. 7 o'clock, give or take. I'd like to call the meeting of February 6th of the Cohasset Community Preservation Committee to order. We'll do a roll call saying who's here. We'll start with Corey.
Corey Evans here.
Can
Michael.
you acknowledge me here?
Michael
Michael Dickey's here.
and Chris.
Chris Plex here.
Tom.
Tom Reardon here.
And Russ Benetti here. Okay. We had sent out the form that's on the website for the Community Preservation Committee, people in Boston. And I know Mike had made some comments about some of the things in there. So why don't we let Michael start with this? And I assume you have what you needed or what you sent there ready to go, Mike?
No, but I think I had maybe 4 items that
Okay.
just kind of popped out. I think there seemed to be a bifurcation between the town and the CPC, which is fine, but some of the provisions, especially I think some of the protective provisions only mentioned the town. So it just seems to me, if the town is worthy of protection in the agreement, board should be getting equivalent protection as well. So
Okay.
that's relatively straightforward drafting exercise. You just make sure the protective reference both the town and the board rather than just the town.
Just a quick question. Are we talking about the form that Russ sent out earlier that came from the CPA people, or are we talking about the town
Yeah.
council version? Because I think the town council version addressed that.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
I'm just wondering which version we're talking about.
I had a look at what, which I think you're right, was a model from a kind of a statewide resource.
Exactly. And I think the town council version that came out yesterday or the other day
Okay.
addressed that issue of vulnerability.
Mhm. Oh, that's good. Well, then maybe the town council version incorporated the that I had flagged, and we don't, it don't have to listen to me drone on it.
Yeah, Lauren, did
Well,
you?
why don't we go through go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just seeing if Lauren had any comments she'd like to make.
Well, I'm wondering whether, and thank you all, as I said, thank you for having me. I'm wondering if it makes sense to kind of go through the draft together that I sent over. I can kind of tell you why we included the things we did, and then if there are still things that Michael thinks we should add, and or anyone else thinks we should add or address, happy to do so.
Okay. Does that sound good to everyone?
I have one threshold question. Why do we need this kind of highly structured agreement for the housing group that we don't have for any other recipients for whom we make grants?
That's a great question. And the short answer is that the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust is an entity unto itself and for purposes of legal standing. We file a trust agreement with, so that it is formally an actual separate entity from the town. It's treated by law as a department of the town for various purposes, but it is still not the town, and it can do things that may differ from what the town can do. And so the goal with this agreement, and it is something like this that we've been suggesting using from the start of the CPA, is that we're giving money to these entities to use for the specific purposes for which they're given, and only for those purposes. And if they don't use them for those purposes, then we want them back. And we don't want to pay for the work that's required for us to get them back. So in addition, because it's not the town, one of the purposes of this is to kind of put in writing, we want reports, we want access to records, etc. We don't typically go around, even let's say we give to the fire department and we'll say, buy 20 new air supplies. In that instance, the fire department's only using it for that. There's no ability to use the money for anything else. But if the fire department doesn't spend the money, it's on our books, it's on the town's books. And at the end of the year, we just close it out. Once we give the money to the trust, it is independent from the town, and we have no ability to quote unquote close it out or do anything of that sort.
But we do deal with entities that are not the town. We deal with recreation organizations, we deal with private organizations, we deal with the historical society, we deal with a lot of different agencies that are not the town. And
Cohasset Housing Authority is
anybody
not the
through
town.
this kind of process, which I'm just arguing, should we, or is something
yes.
distinct here?
No,
Yes.
yes, we should. I would recommend doing it for any non-town entity. And that includes the housing authority, even though the housing authority is also a department of the town for various purposes, and only has certain jurisdiction. Yes, anything that's not the town. So unless it's something for a town hall or for, the town's public fields, etc., I would say we should have a grant agreement that's similar to this.
May I ask, I'm representing the Cohasset Housing Authority. The properties owned by the Cohasset Housing Authority, which are the beneficiaries of CPA grants, are owned by the Cohasset Housing Authority, not the town. But another point I'd like to make is, having worked on many grants over the years, I have often wondered why the CPA does not require interim and final reports of a more formal nature.
Mhm.
Any grant organization requires that.
I put
It shouldn't
that
be
in
just
there.
the town.
I put it in there, I promise. Reporting
I mean,
requirements.
I don't know if this is something that just has to be enacted by the CPA to say that any grant given by the CPA, we expect to have interim and final reports.
Well, I would add to that, and if I may, and I know I'm kind of jumping in, but once so the Community Preservation Committee makes a recommendation to town meeting about the expenditure of CPA funds, okay? And once that happens, the expenditure of those funds is not seated with the CPC. It's seated with whoever's the entity authorized to expend. So for example, typically the select board is authorized to enter into contracts in town. And so the select board would be the entity that entered into the grant agreement with the recipient, the grant recipient, following consultation with the Community Preservation Committee and following, identification of the purposes and the goals of the committee with such a project. But every town kind of does it differently for a while, and then something will come up where we want to try to get money back or something, and it's like, oh, we hadn't been using this process, and that creates potential issues for the town.
Lauren, what might be helpful is if you could explain some of the bad potential outcomes that we would avoid with the agreement.
Certainly, I'd be happy to. In short, if we give money to a private entity and they choose to spend it in a different way or for different purposes, and we have no agreement with them that says that they plan to spend it in a certain way, then we have no recourse. And certainly we could, try to recoup the money in some sort of a, declaratory action of some sort, but it's unlikely to be as successful as it would be if we have what is essentially a contract where both sides know their responsibilities and obligations.
So this creates an obligation for the money to be used in the way the contract describes, which is this group's intent.
Exactly.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And town meetings vote, whatever it is that you guys recommend to town meeting, and then town meeting votes, that's the purpose, right, of that they can spend the money for. And then the conditions, as I said, would be something that you all would work on, and then ultimately the select board would be the one that signed the agreement.
Should this agreement then apply to all agencies and not just the Affordable Housing Trust? Any agency that the CPA gives money to? Wouldn't that
Well,
make sense?
My short answer to that, without looking back in time going forward, I would say yes. But they can't all be identical because they're not for identical purposes. Certainly, though, this would be a good form to start with. And so you could, change the dates and the purposes and the reference to the applications and the years and all that stuff. But yes, I do think anytime that the town gives money to a private entity, and whether that's the CPA money or some other money, there should be a grant agreement.
There's very little in this that would have to be changed. It's pretty generalized and only occasional references to the actual housing trust once you get past them.
So I do think that's true. I will say, though, that the housing trust is kind of an entity unto its own. And part of that is that we can give money to them for any of the reasons consistent with, the community housing purposes of the CPA. We could do that for, let's say, the housing authority as well, but the Affordable Housing Trust has more room to kind of navigate. It's not considered to be a public entity in the same way that, let's say, the housing authority is, in that it, it can buy property, it can sell property, it doesn't need the select board's approval. It has independent statutory rights that go beyond what a housing authority might have. So one of the reasons we see these with housing trusts is because of that kind of general grant of authority that they have to make sure that we're kind of setting the rules for how that will work.
So Lauren,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
On one side of the contract is the housing authority. Who is bound on the other side of the contract? Is it the town, or is
Yes.
it this group here? It's the town.
It's the town.
And-
So under state law, and I apologize because I haven't worked with you guys a lot in the past, so I don't know what your kind of practices and procedures are, but just from a straight legal perspective, the Community Preservation Committee considers the preservation needs of the town, historic resources, open space, conservation, and community housing, and makes recommendations on the way that money is going to be expended. Those recommendations go to town meeting, and then town meeting votes to approve that or not. And at that point, the formal role of the CPC under state law is wrapped up. And so, if you guys are providing more substantive support that's fine. It's clearly not, inconsistent with law, but ultimately the select board has the authority to sign contracts and the CPC doesn't. So it would be the select board that signs a contract.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I, Lauren, one thing I noticed is that, and appreciate your guidance on this part on the whole thing, really. But it looked like in the Affordable Housing Trust Declaration, there was wording specifically about use of CPC funds, and then in our own town bylaws is a pretty healthy explanation about this. And understanding that it's going to go to the select board, it's really between the town and select board. Is this kind of a belt and suspenders thing that you would recommend that as council you'd bring to the select board, or do you think even in the interim we're okay? And then follow up to that, since this is a single agreement, is this even going forward with the Affordable Housing Trust? Is this something we should keep redoing, or again, is what we've done, what we have in place, kind of sufficient already? I guess I'm mirroring
Yeah.
the questions of the other members of the committee, which is trying to understand maybe why this is necessary now, but not in other places, and why it's, what we don't already have, that whole thing. I apologize
So-
for a poorly phrased question.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, as you know, we haven't been council for a very long time. And so I don't know that we were involved in any way when the CPC kind of set up its mode of operation, et cetera. The reason that I believe that a grant agreement is needed is because under state law, we have the ability to give money to private entities only under very limited circumstances. And those circumstances are essentially when the grant is for a public purpose of stimulation and support. There's also this part of the Constitution called the Anti-Aid Amendment, which says that we can't give money to nonprofits or schools or this or that, in a manner that kind of leads to the potential for what's the word? Kind of playing favorites or supporting religion or any of these number of things. And so in order to demonstrate and record the public purpose for which we're giving this money, it's not going to an individual, let's say, to do a historical restoration on the outside of their house, because we're giving money to the individual. We're not saying, hey, this would be great, we're going to help you. We're saying we're going to get a conservation or a historic preservation restriction in the front, facade of your house. And that's for the public good. That is a benefit to the public, so that we're essentially buying, a benefit for the public. So in my view, anytime that we give money to a private entity for any purpose, it's best to do a grant agreement.
Well summarized. Thank you.
Here.
So I guess
Michael,
next, sorry.
I just sent your email over to you. So if you want to look at that and see what the other questions may be, or they're there for you. I'm sorry, Corey, didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, understanding that that's the advice, what should this committee do? I mean, obviously you can bring this to the town manager and the board independently yourself, obviously. Would you recommend this committee make a recommendation vote, or is it better for us just in our operation going forward to be aware that we should be prepping any applicants with the expectation that this is coming down the pipe?
Yes and yes. So I would definitely let applicants know that yes, applicants that are private entities, that this would be something that was requested. The other thing that we could do to kind of make sure that that's on people's radar is if you have an application, so we can update the application to reflect that. And in addition, we can note it in the warrant articles that the CPC requests to go on the warrant, that just says, so if it's for a private historical society, let's say, we would say, to transfer from the community preservation fund, whatever account, the sum of blank dollars as a grant to the historical society for whatever purposes, and to authorize the select board, following consultation with the CPC, to enter into a grant agreement for those purposes. So it would be more part of the kind of standard operating procedure.
Makes sense.
So if we were going to apply for a grant, there are two ways to look at it. But if say the housing authority was going to apply for a grant, would this be an added obligation? Now that we have to report on our grant activities to the town as well as to the CPC?
Sorry, just for 1 second. Sorry, my dogs are going a little crazy here. I'm trying to manage that. Yes, I mean, it wouldn't be a separate report. It would be part of the reporting structure. So I think that's kind of the important thing to recognize here is that this isn't something different. It's really just the same. And it's just that the select board signs and the select board is really the contract manager. But you all have the substantive knowledge about why you said yes and what you were hoping they would accomplish and all those things. So it makes sense for you to be kind of the monitoring agent. So I don't think this is different other than the select board would be kept in the loop.
I think they are anyway, but now it's regarding the committee and grant requests that come in.
Mhm.
My feeling is that we would have a better handle on past performances if we did require some kind of summary of projects when they're complete.
Yeah, in the draft that I provided to you, I included a requirement for a monthly report and a final report. So, and the applications themselves would hopefully include the detail that you needed to make you feel comfortable to say yes or no in the first place. And if it doesn't, in my view, you have the ability to go back and say, look, we think this is a great idea, but we need more details because, we're concerned that, we're going to say yes, but we're just kind of saying yes to an idea or general idea rather than a proposed project. So yes, you can require that reporting, and it seems to me to be a good thing to include.
Speaking of the application, should we reference the application and the other supporting materials that have been submitted to the CPC and wind them into the agreement as well?
It should be in there already. Let me double check. As a grant, I'm pretty sure. Hold on 1 second. Talk about all the documents. If it's not there, it's an omission. So it should definitely be in there. Yep.
Okay.
So I'll add that right in. I have it open in front of me.
They also have to file with the DOR, I think, on an annual basis.
By they, you mean the CPC?
No, the Affordable Housing Trust would have to file with the DOR. That's in the agreement as well, I assume.
I don't think it is, but I would be, I can add that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, presumably give us a copy of what they file with the deal.
Okay, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
we need another awareness.
Yeah, because we're required to report back on that, actually. Just looking at our bylaw.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're required to file with DOR at the end of the year too. So yeah, I think that's absolutely
feedback loop.
appropriate. Let me go to the reporting section and just add that.
I know it's warmer outside, but my house still has not warmed up from the cold snap. My feet are freezing. It's neither here nor there, but sitting here shivering.
We lost our cold water to the second floor all day Friday, all day Saturday, and came back on early on Sunday morning.
Yikes.
Scary.
All right, so I have in section 3F, it says, until all the grant funds have been expended, grantees shall prepare and submit to the CPC and the town administrator quarterly reports concerning the use of such monies, which reports shall outline the purposes for which the grant funds have been used and any problems encountered. Grantees shall submit these reports in writing and may be requested to make verbal presentations at CPC or select board meetings. grantee shall provide a final report immediately following its final expenditure of all funds. So I will add in there that copies of any state required filings be included in the quarterly reports. So
That include filings to the CPC, I mean, copies to the CPC as well.
So everything is going to get copied to you.
Okay, good.
It's just that the select board is
Yeah.
the contract authority.
I understand that, yeah.
Okay.
It appears that I've been knocked off of this entirely. I don't know if
No,
you
you're
can.
there.
I am.
You're here.
Ah,
You're here, Russ.
okay.
We can still see you,
Alright.
for better or worse.
Yeah, for worse or worse. You can be honest. I have no illusions. No, I don't have a camera all of a sudden here. Okay, anyone else have questions for Laura? Lauren, sorry.
Yeah, a couple.
Okay.
Is this, would the will CPC fall in section, yes. Section 7. I kind of thought maybe the CPC should be added to sections. If the towns, if CPC is not going to be signing the actual maybe the CPC doesn't have to be mentioned.
No, it says the town, its departments, officers, employees, representatives, and agents.
Is the CPC a department, officer and representative or agent?
It's the town.
I'm the CPC.
So the CPC isn't separate from the town, in my opinion. It is the town.
So would we hear about any of these failures or whatever? So that
So-
if somebody came around for another grant, we would
So-
know.
This, I mean, I think kind of, we're kind of talking at cross purposes. Nothing about what this grant agreement requires is different than what's required right now, except that the select board is going to get copied or through the town administrator. And really, because this is a contract, that's how it should work no matter what. The CPC isn't in making its decision. The only thing it could be challenged on is the decision that it makes. And basically what we're talking about is if somebody uses these funds badly, not about the decision to use the funds. For that, there is no risk of exposure for individual members of the CPC. Remember as well that a lot of times we're dealing with private entities. And so what we're really asking for, because the town can't really provide indemnification to anyone else for these purposes, right? We need an appropriation in order to indemnify. We don't have one. So this is a one-way indemnification. It's meant just for the protection of the town. It does nothing for the grantee, and it's not intended to. So individual members of boards and committees have very limited exposure. The only type of exposure that could arise is if, when acting in the when acting in your official capacity, you intentionally violate someone's civil rights, and none of that is here. So I don't see any risk for the CPC at all.
I wasn't thinking of indemnity. I realize that we're not. But these are the same groups that come back year after year for grants. And it's in our interest to know if something went seriously wrong.
Well, you'll be getting reports all along, so you would know.
Okay,
Yeah, and if the town is going to bring, if the select board decides to bring a legal action against anyone, once it passes the should we sue them stage, the name of that case is going to be on the agenda for their meetings. So
okay.
Lauren, how difficult would it be to, in addition to what you've done, to give us a boilerplate kind of version of this that not as focused specifically on the housing authority, but that we could use as a template to use for all of our grants?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I said that earlier. I think one of the main issues that I saw in this is that we're just giving $500,000 and saying, do what you will, consistent with the law. It's normally, we are gonna pay you X dollars, you're gonna give us a restriction, an affordable housing restriction, and if you fail to do any of these things, all the rest of this stuff will happen. Or, you know, you've asked, you filed an application for historic preservation for the CPA money to be used to purchase a historic preservation restriction so that person X can do a historic renovation of the outside of their house. So again, it's much more specific. We'll give you the money when X occurs. Here, it's just a little more amorphous because we're giving it to this affordable housing trust, which has obligations under statute and which can, you know, we're telling them you can only use the money this way. But in most circumstances, there would be something more specific that we would be wanting and with deadlines or that kind of thing.
Would it be helpful to make clear that the indemnity provision or indemnity obligation, as well as the obligation to return funds as set in 9, survive termination of the agreement?
Certainly. I mean, we can add whatever you think is appropriate. I have no problem with constructive and helpful advice. So I think, you know, certainly if that's something that you would see in there, let's put it, that you think should be in there, let's put it in there.
That I see that type of survival of certain options. It's often the indemnity, and certainly we clearly want them to return funds. So, you know, that they should, obligation to return funds is set out in, I guess, 8 and 9 should probably survive indemnity.
Okay.
When you say the return to the town's community preservation fund, is that us, community preservation committee?
It's so it's not the community preservation committee, it's the community preservation fund.
But
and-
if those funds came from us originally,
Yeah.
They don't
from
come
the
from us,
town?
though.
why wouldn't
They
they go
come from
back
town
into
meeting.
our kitty?
Well, that's what a community preservation fund is. That's the money that you all are making recommendations on.
Yeah,
The
and
community
I
preservation
guess
fund.
the extent that we've been told that the CPC is really the town. I think, you know, whether it says the funds should be returned to the CPC, I see that as you know, same, you know, right pocket. I just,
So-
the point I was trying to raise is the technical point. The agreement's terminated, then the obligation in the agreement to return technically could be argued as terminated as well. So you want to add in liability language for certain important provisions so that they can, you know, the obligation to return the funds was part of the agreement and you've just terminated the ergo, no more obligation to return the funds.
So absolutely, we'll add that in. I guess, so I kind of assumed for this conversation that you guys were calling things the same thing that I call them. So maybe we should kind of just go back and just make sure. So the Community Preservation Fund is the place where you have the 3 buckets for the 3 different purposes. It's where you have the budgeted reserve if you approve one, and you have a fund balance. All of that together is the Community Preservation Fund. So your estimated annual revenues, which is the surcharge and the payment from the year before, come into the Community Preservation Fund. And then we assign 10% for each of the 3 purposes to one of the buckets, or we spend it on that purpose. So when I mean, it says it in state law already, when community preservation monies are collected by the town from sale of, you know, from sale of land, let's say that was purchased with a community preservation fund, et cetera, community preservation funds, that is automatically returned to the community preservation fund. And so when we're talking about about what to do with the funds, it says, town, okay, any funds so returned or recovered shall be placed in the town's community preservation fund. So that's what you are asking. It goes there under this agreement, but it also goes there under state law.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Tom?
I guess the only question I have is to go back what I just raised a few minutes ago. I'm looking for some sort of a document that we can use without having to go to the town council every time we make a grant, but that covers us sort of on a template basis, and we can make adjustments that would be logical and insert them within the thing. Is that a possibility, or do we have to go and get every one of these approved individually?
No, I mean, I'm happy to provide you with a template. I just, again, I think it's important to recognize that there are different terms and different transactions. And so there might not be something in this that we need in another, and there might be something in another we don't need in this. So typically we can just, you know, we'd start from this. If you said to us, this is what we put together, can you take a look? And we all started from something like this, it'd be pretty easy to do that review.
Yeah, that sounds like a good suggestion. Provide us with, I guess, a base kind of amongst ourselves, take a crack at completing or you know, kind of putting in the names and the amounts and hand it over to you folks to ensure that we didn't put our foot wrong.
Yeah, just to do a once over. And for example,
Yeah.
let's say we're buying that historic preservation restriction. So there's a few things that we need. We need an article, we need to authorize the select board to accept that. And then we would need to make sure that we get that restriction before we give them the money or whatever it is. So those types of things we would have to address once or twice, I think, just to get it right for you all, and then you could probably use it from there. But yeah, we're happy to give it a quick once over for legal review.
In section 11, it says the grantee shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws and
Yes.
orders applicable to the use of funds, like that. And it says such incorporated herein by reference.
Mhm.
And I haven't seen that before like it. So I'm wondering what your thinking is as to why it's reason why I'm not sure I like it is all of the we as the town or the CPC don't know what all these, and if they're incorporated by reference, arguably to the extent they apply to the town, we're going to be obligated to comply with them too.
Well, this says
And-
grantee shall comply. So
But
the
but
idea,
if the provisions are incorporated by reference, they would become terms of the contract, or arguably could apply to the town without.
and I think that the point of this is they are not, because they're getting this grant, free from complying with other federal, state, and local laws. And there's no list that we can come up with. I mean, they're subject to, you know, prevailing wage laws, and subject to you know, laws of the Secretary of State in terms of registering their corporations, and they're subject to annually and changing the officers, and they're subject to permitting and local licensing, and et cetera. And so our point is, hey, if you mess up any of that, that's another thing that's part of this contract that we have the ability to terminate the contract or ask for our money back because of.
Okay. So the first part of that phrase obligates the grantee to comply with all applicable laws.
Mhm.
That standing on its own obligates the grantee to comply with all applicable laws. By add there, all of these applicable laws are incorporated by reference. What additional do you get from that
'Cause it's a
incorporating them by reference?
Yeah, because then it's a violation of the contract for them not to do them.
And so grantee shall comply with all applicable federal laws and they don't, there wouldn't be a breach of unless we add the magic word, such provisions being incorporated here by reference?
Well, that's what we typically do, because the point that we're trying to make is this document is to protect the town. It is to ensure that we aren't giving anyone permission to do anything that isn't in compliance with law, and we're leaving it as their responsibility to work that
Okay.
out. So, I mean, we use this not only in this type of contract, but in lots and lots of contracts that we do. Because our point is you need to be a good corporate citizen, you need to follow the rules in order
Oh,
to
yeah.
get this
No,
money.
no,
And if
no.
you don't,
I meant there.
Then-
Okay, well, all right. In the notice section,
Mhm.
why not include the ability to this is by email?
That's completely a policy decision up to you guys. We can certainly add that.
Well,
I
I
mean,
don't know. I'm just
doesn't have a
me. But most of the time, business today is done via email. That we add email, but obviously I'm just a vote of one.
Well, no,
Well-
you're a vote of two, Michael. I'll vote along with you on the law anytime.
I have no concern about that, other than, again, kind of in terms of being able to document things and be able to demonstrate that things were sent and that they are legit for the mailbox rule, they're legit for, whatever other purposes we need them to be.
Lauren,
Yes,
I would actually oppose conducting business by email because there are all sorts of email addresses that go stale. I don't even know if someone needed to email something to the Community Preservation Committee, if there's a common email address or people just go to Russ. So I think a physical address, you don't have that issue because town hall is not going anywhere. It's a lot easier to get things to town hall consistently than it is to get things to Community Preservation Committee at whatever.com, which I don't even know if that exists. So that's my 2 cents.
I
I
would
agree with that.
also.
Well,
I would,
I got it. It's fine for notice to be mailed to the town hall, but what there in the notice section, there's no address to be used for purposes of the
that would have
the
to
other
be added,
party.
Michael, that would have to be added. Again, this
What
was,
about the,
You can
Go ahead,
always
sorry.
add it, again, purposes of argument, you could always add a designated email address if, well, tough cookies, that's the address that's in the contract. So,
I'm just worried
you know,
I'd lose the password or Russ would lose the password.
don't we
Again.
have an official email on the town website? Isn't all, I know
the
in the housing
notice-
authority, we're supposed to communicate just through that email.
Does
that's the
anyone
official
know?
town email.
the notice would go to the select board, though. I want to be clear about this. The notice isn't to the CPC, although I'm certain it would get shared with you. The notice goes to the select board. This is a contract like any other contract of the town.
And I think, as I think about this, what's important about the CPC is we're a recommendation body, right? We recommend, but then the execution of the funds, the awarding of the funds is actually town meeting and therefore the town of Cohasset. And if there's any violation of said expending of funds, that really has to do with town council, the town manager's office, and the town, not really our recommendation power. I think what's important for us is to say, before you come back and ask for us for more money, we will expect the reporting. So if there's a group of people that is looking to get more money, but they've not held up their end of the bargain, whether or not it's legal or not, it's kind of outside of our scope, but we can say, you haven't reported to us in a way that makes us feel good about giving you additional money. And so therefore, we're not going to recommend that further money be expended unless, so that's really, I think, as our committee, as it comes to, keeping people responsible, it's more on the next round of funding that we really can concentrate on, understand this. Is that a good kind of rephrasal?
Yes,
That is
yes.
exactly. I mean, we try to put our fingers into this pie here and control the outcomes through the use of the contract. But if even under this contract, they don't come to you with the, appropriate level of specificity, et cetera, and they're reporting, you absolutely have the ability to say, no, sorry, we tried this once, we didn't like it. So that's kind of the power of your recommendation. And as you know, town meeting can't act on any of this. They can't recommend, they can't appropriate the spending of any CPA funds without your recommendation. So you guys really, you just kind of cut it off right there if you say no, thank you to that.
Anyone
Yeah, and I
else?
think part of the way to avoid that is to, right at the outset, demand more specificity and detail in these grant proposals. I'm really kind of surprised at some of the things that we've accepted. Not because they weren't a good project, but they just lack the kind of detail you would expect in any grant proposal.
So that's something that you guys can take a look at anyway. You can look at your application and you could decide, is it giving you the type of information that you need to feel comfortable about giving money to a private, or semi-private entity, an entity other than the town. And even if you get them, even if you get them and you think, oh, this really isn't good enough, you could say, can you please provide us with additional detail before we act on this? So there's nothing that requires you to just say yes or no based on what they've submitted. You have the ability to ask for more.
All right. Any
And
other questions?
No,
Mike?
one wanted to ask about was counterparts. Got a lot of people signing this thing. But it seems to me it'd be a lot easier to add some counterpart language to so you wouldn't have to run around with just a single agreement to get everybody to sign.
Sure.
And also electronic signatures or copies of PDFs or something. I mean, again, I'm used to sending somebody a PDF and having them sign it, scan it, and send it back, as opposed to requiring wet signatures. But again,
I would say that's typically what happens. I'm happy to add the counterparts language though, to make it clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Chris? Are you all set, Chris?
I'm all set. Thank you, Russ.
Okay. Jenny, any other questions?
Not right now, but I think at some point we might want to review our guidelines for grant applications.
Okay,
Yeah.
I agree with that. Corey, anything else you want to toss in?
Nothing, just, is there anything we need to do with it tonight? Just question, I mean, do we need to take a vote for recommendation, or are we good? Kind of what's the next step for us?
I would say we get the draft from Lauren, discuss it and vote it then.
Okay.
Sounds like a
Yep.
plan.
I
Okay.
can update it and send it back, and I'll also send a like a blanket kind of form for you to look at, Tom, to see if it's what you're talking about.
Okay. Tom, any questions?
All set.
Are you still in Florida?
I am.
The
Jealous.
ceiling fan gave it away in the background.
That's the time to be there.
Friday it was 83, Friday and Saturday it was 83 degrees here and sunshine.
Wow.
Quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the
If you'd
muted power here.
reversed that
Tom,
to
be careful.
38, it would have been warm here.
We're gonna stick you on top of Mount Washington.
I hate people like
Any
me.
other questions for Lauren?
Thank you
Jenny?
very much, Lauren. That was a
Okay.
great
Thank you.
presentation.
Well,
Lauren,
thank you
very
for
much.
having me.
Thank you.
And I'll look forward to working with you guys more in the future.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Appreciate you
it. Thank
taking
you.
the time for
Thank
us.
you. All right. Take
Thanks.
care. Bye-bye, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next on the agenda was member comments. Outside of anything we just discussed, anybody have anything they want to? Corey?
Not for me tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Michael?
I'm good.
Thomas.
I'm good.
Okay, Chris.
Nothing to share, Russ.
Okay, Jenny.
Fine, thank you.
I don't know if we have any members of the public out there. I don't believe so. The last thing is to approve the minutes for the 23rd. On one thing I would like to see changed is on the election of the chair. Said that we'll reschedule the election of chair since some members are present tonight. And that should be, are not present tonight, which is the case tonight as well. Otherwise, I have nothing to change on the minutes. Does anyone else?
Yep.
Nope.
Well,
Okay.
only one thing, I wasn't there, so I'll have to abstain. I just don't know if that affects your quorum. You still have 5, so I guess you're okay.
No, we still got 5. We're fine. Okay,
Right.
all in favor of accepting the minutes? We'll do this roll call. Jenny,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
and I shall say aye as well. Okay, when Lauren gets this over to us, I'll shoot it out to everyone, and we'll figure another meeting in the near future. If Tom has enough room down there in Florida.
That'd be great.
It would be nice. Oh, then, if I could get a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second,
Second,
okay, roll call vote. Corey,
Corey Evans, aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
I'll follow with you guys. Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Thanks,
time
Russ. Thanks,
tonight.
everybody.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Good.
Have a good night.
Good night.